Hello, and welcome to the Footy Podcast. To benefit Here's Help. Here's Help is a nonprofit comprehensive rehabilitation and educational agency that's been providing treatment services in South Florida since 1968. For more information on Here's Help or Footy's podcast, you can contact us at 305-685-8201. If you need help or know someone who has a substance abuse or alcohol problem, you can call our admissions office at 305-685-8201, extension 224. If you'd like to make a cash donation to Here's Help and join the fight against drug abuse, call Footy at 305-685-8201, extension 227. Now, here's Footy.
Welcome to the Footy Podcast. This is episode number 2. I'm Footy. And this is the great Ron Hersey, and we're here to talk to you about everything and anything that's going on. Plus, we want to take you on a trip around some of the adventures that we have had through our years in radio. Ron, you've been in radio for?
Ever.
Yeah.
I started in, I figured it was 1972. When I started my first job at WOVV in Fort Pierce.
Yeah, I was 74.
So,
and
it's been a ride.
I didn't even know what a studio was.
Right.
I didn't know. You know who taught Al Leiniger and Kramer?
Yeah. Kramer, the midday man at Y100.
Yeah, he's a good guy. It's a shame. He was with that Adrian Cronauer in Vietnam. They made the movie about it.
Yeah, Good Morning Vietnam.
Yeah.
Robert used to say, Kramer was there.
Kramer was in that. He was on that team. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so here's what's going on. I have a weekly podcast that we started a couple weeks ago, and we record it once a week, and then we put it up. If you like it, you can go listen to it or watch it. So this will be video and audio, right? Okay. So I thought today you'll get a kick out of this. There's some news I'd like to go over though. Let's go over the news first, just quickly. Big boat crash in Bimini, and guy had a 32-foot Everglades. That's a big, heavy, and it's a top-of-the-line boat. I don't know how many motors he had on it, but I'll show you the picture, and he had a little mishap.
Oh my God!
Yeah, the bottom of the hull has been torn completely out of the boat.
Anybody get hurt?
Yeah. One dead, one missing.
Oh my God!
And he did. You know what he did? He was over there. Have that little casino now in the hotel, and he befriended another couple who was on vacation, and at night he asked if they wanted to go for a ride. From what the reports say. Well, I've spent a lot of time on boats since I was a little kid and all the way up till now. And there's something you got to understand about boats and night is everything moves at night. It's not where you thought it was at noon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They're in different places, not literally, but they're not.
Well, your whole perception changes for one thing.
The darkness,
and plus tides. If you're out in the ocean.
Yeah, this is not a tides problem. Well, you could run aground because
you're not aware of the tide.
This looks to me, and I'm not a forensic investigator by any stretch of the imagination, but this has all the landmarks of, whoops, I hit the rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And there are rocks around Alicedown, Bimini. And, things move, I'm telling you.
I don't know why people think there's any difference between driving a boat, piloting a boat, and driving a car. I mean, they're both motorized vehicles. They're both pretty much just as dangerous as, there's so many, like you said, there's so many things that can happen in a boat. And people think that, you get in it and just go as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Like, in the first place, I know you could probably attest to this from all your years of boat racing, being in a boat that's flying across the water is not pleasant. It's not a pleasant experience. You're bouncing around, you're hanging on for dear life. It's hit smack in the water. And I don't know why people that pilot boats think that they have to go flat out the whole time they're in it. That's not enjoyable.
There's a lot of stupid male testosterone going on.
Well, look at that Marlins pitcher.
Oh, Fernandez.
Yeah, that was so unnecessary.
Well, he hit that jetty.
Yeah. But how do you hit a jetty? For crying out loud. How do you not see that?
I'll tell you how you hit the jetty.
You lose control.
No, he didn't lose control. Mm-hmm. He didn't follow the navigational aids.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thing called a whistle buoy at Government Cut. You're supposed to go to the whistle buoy and then make your entrance into the harbor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they came up from, in fact, I think they came from the Miami River, and they came down, and they didn't follow the navigation. In boats today, it's all electronic. You have a screen in front of you, giant screens that tell you where every rock and marker and everything is.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be smart enough to follow them. But in defense, it's not that easy.
Mm-hmm.
But, I go back to hold on. hand me the chart. Okay. So, but now we have technology that's
right.
I don't know how many times I went in the Government Cut at night in the dark, and but I understood I knew where the jetty was.
Mm-hmm.
I knew where the whistle buoy was. Not that I was the safest, greatest guy in the world, but you learn. Well, I'll tell you what. You really brought up a good entree into a story. Remember Dave Ross, our general manager?
Very well.
Rest in peace. Good guy, great guy. Dave was from Cleveland, and he raced boats in the Great Lakes. He had a race boat, and he was doing it. And he was pretty adept at it. He was pretty good. So one day, I was probably sitting there with you and Sonny, and Dave calls me in the office, and he says, "Hey, Footy, do me a favor." It was a Friday. He said, "Would you go down the Holiday Isle and see Joe Roth?" Joe was a friend of mine. We were all buddies. That's the world. And he said, "See Joe Roth. Tell him I can't make it." So I was then tasked to go down and MC the captain's meeting. That's where all the drivers, the drivers meeting, are standing around having cocktails.
Right.
And getting ready for the race and the placements and all that stuff. And Coast Guard is there because they supervise the whole thing. You can't just go put on a race. Okay? You have to have the navigational aids. You have to get permission from the Coast Guard. You have to get Florida Fish and Wildlife. It's a big deal. And at Holiday Isle was derelict till Joe Roth took it over, and it became the hottest spot in the Florida Keys, or the hottest spot south of Miami.
I still have my little button that says I'm a close personal friend of Joe Roth.
Joe Roth, yeah. he was really an amazing character.
He really was. And I have a great Joe Roth story to share. I don't want to derail your story, but I have a follow-up on the Joe Roth thing. Yeah,
he got that land that was across the street on US 1. It's a giant piece of property. It was like a marina. I docked there a few times. I ate there a lot. Had a restaurant. And
Holiday Inn?
No, but on the other side of the street, he got that piece of land, which was enormous.
Yeah,
and either he and or his kids donated it to Monroe County.
Wow.
They turned it into soccer fields and baseball fields and everything for the kids. And they were great. They were great kids, Joe's kids. But anyway, so I said, yeah, all right, I'll go down. Yeah, I know Joe. It's always fun to go down to Holiday
Yeah,
Island.
like anybody needs an excuse to go to Alamorada. Yeah.
On a Friday night.
Yeah.
Right. So I, yeah, okay, I'll go. And I drove down, and I get there, well, I don't know, 5, 6 o'clock, and I go to the driver's meeting in the Horizon, that restaurant area they had.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all these guys, okay? And they're all in flowered shirts, and they're all having a couple of cocktails, and the Coast Guard is having a couple of cocktails, and everybody is. And Joe's there, and he's like the host. So he calls me up to help MC the captain's meeting. Well, to give you an example, there's a guy. There was a guy named Dave Gilmore. In fact, I raced in one of his boats, and he's standing at the driver's meeting the night before, and he's got on like the fake batting helmet with the 2 cup holders on the side and a tube going into his mouth. So I'm like, all right, I can see safety first is their motto. Okay. So all of a sudden, there's a guy in the back of the room, and he says, hey, he can ride with me. And I'm like, who's this, you know? Well, it was a guy named Gary Jeffries, and we became very good friends. I still hear from him from time to time.
I haven't heard these names in a long time.
And he let me put it this guy was a one-man, okay? Him and I had a lot of good times. Yeah. But we were always going to Bimini, or we were always going to Atlantis, or we were always going wherever, fishing. We would go to Alistown and Bimini for lunch, and then just come back.
Mm-hmm.
And they sell the international versions of Beck's, clear bottle Beck's, and the myth of that, or the reality, is that the alcohol content is higher. So, because the United States, they got a lot more. We got more rules than everyone else in the world. But anyway, we had a lot of fun. We fished, we dived, we take the kids, we take the friends. We did a lot of things. We had really a good time, and we never ran the boat into the rocks or any of that stuff.
Right.
So anyway, so I'm like, you can ride with me is ringing in my ears, like, I can ride with this. Oh, and by the way, everyone's having a cocktail, so I'm not just tattling here. We're all.
And this is the night before the big race.
Oh yeah,
and they're starting at 5 o'clock.
No, it actually the starts at 10 o'clock usually, because they want to make sure that the other drunken people can come and watch the race. Okay, so I go over, introduce myself. I'm talking to him, and he's with a guy named Howard Quam, who owned the pancake houses.
Wow.
And he owned the whole chain, a lot of money. And he owns the boat. It's his boat, but he's hired Gary to drive. Mm. See, because in those offshore boats, especially back then, it's a lot different now, but they had what we call bolster seats. You stand up, and it's like cushions, and you hold on for dear life, just as you said.
And there's three guys per boat, right?
Yeah. There's the driver, the throttle man, who is the most important, and then there is what's called the navigator, which is what I was. With the navigator's job is to shut up and hold on for dear life. Okay, that's pretty much, I figured out. This is what. Although I did go to a race in Cape Coral where you actually had to navigate.
Wow.
But.
Well, just the fact that you're in a boat that's going so fast that you're not capable of handling the steering and the throttle and knowing where you're going at the same time sort of illustrates the danger involved in what you're talking about.
So Cape Coral, it was like there was different laps, so you had to navigate. Right. But what the guys do is they start following the guy in front of them. And at Cape Coral, it's the Gulf, so it's shallow. The people would walk out a mile.
Wow.
And then here comes the and then duck, get out of here! They're gonna plow 27,000 people over here any minute.
Oh,
So anyway, I'm supposed to meet them at the boat the next morning, and I'm down by the dock, 9:30, got a sticky bun, and ready to go, and there's Quam and Gary is nowhere to be seen, and all the other boats are starting up to get ready to go, and I'm like, well, what? What do I? You're not going to give me the keys, are you? Now, you also have to understand that these are very big boats, okay? Now, there's different classes. Like, I raced in a B class, and it's like a 28, 30-footer, okay? These things are 40, 50, 60 feet. And they also are capable of flight.
Yeah.
All right, which you learn pretty quickly. So we're there, and this is it's called a superboat. This is the top class. And I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. And then I spot my friend Gary, and he's on the phone. And everybody else is idling out to go to the race. And a lot of dubious characters in that crowd, too. But you know what? Everybody thinks they weren't all smugs. They're not all smugs. What happens, you have dock rats like me and Gary, and you have rich guys like Quam who just want a thrill. And then you have guys, that grew up but you can't tell the players without a scorecard.
Right.
All right. You don't know exactly who's doing what. You watch, you look, you see things that look kind of suspicious, but hey, that's the Coast Guard's job. They'll get them. So finally, I'm in the boat with Quam.
He finally got off the phone.
No, Gary's still on the phone, and he's having a little pick-me-up on the phone. And finally, the marina's empty because everybody has to parade out and they go to the start. So, and excuse me for playing with my mask, but I can't help it. They've been trying to get me to stop for quite a while.
Right.
So now we get in the boat. And the boats, what happens is they have open exhausts. Engines have to breathe. So there's no muffler on these things, okay?
Oh, yeah.
And there's fire, the explosive of the, whatever
Spark plug.
whatever kind of fuel you're using, okay, coming out to that. So, and here I am with the stupid helmet on. I don't have I have a thing to hold on to. That's pretty much it.
Right.
So I asked him. I said, "So what do we do if there's a mishap?" Jump. That was the
That's the directive.
that's the technique. Just jump. And you're wearing a kill switch. So when you jump, it theoretically shuts off the motor, so the boat doesn't drive over you,
Right.
and you turn into cat food. All right. So we're out there, and Gary's like in no hurry. I'm like, he is a terrific character.
Oh,
You have a good time. You go, Gary.
Oh, no question about that.
We went to Atlantis back then called Paradise Island for Junkanoo, New Year's Eve, and that's a big deal. And we were at Cafe Martinique. You have to put on jackets. I mean, so we're at the table, and the Junkanoo band comes out of the kitchen they bang pots and pans and cymbals and stuff. Well, who's in the middle of the Junkanoo band? Take a guess. It's Gary. He's in there. He's got the outfit on, and he's hitting the thing. I'm like dying. I'm dying. And we were with a guy named Yul Pinder, who was a Bahamian, very good friend of mine, rest in peace. And we had some tremendous time. So anyway, now I'm in this boat. Well, I should put it differently. Ship.
Right.
Okay, with
Oh, it's so loud.
yeah, and we're going, and we're idling out, and Gary's like looking up. My hands are already have lost circulation, and we haven't gotten up on plane
You're
yet.
hanging on for dear life, and you're just idling.
Yeah, exactly. And these boats are going by, and these guys are not kidding.
Oh no, no,
All right. You
Once-
learn that quick.
when the race starts, the BS.
Someday I'll tell you
stops.
about my mini boat career. Anyway, so we're out there, and there's a pace boat and a start, and I think Joe waves the flag. Was waving the flag, and
It was a
we're-
white flag, by the way.
No,
It's a surrender.
no. So, and the course, the best I could figure it out was from the start and finish line, which is off the marina, in relatively deep water, and is Alligator Light. There's a series of lighthouses down the Florida coast, and particularly the Florida Keys, and the one at Holiday Isle or Isla Morada, it's really Isla Morada. It means the Purple Isle, and it's named that because it had purple vegetation when the Spaniards came by. So anyway, there's a light, Alligator Light. It's still there. There's Fowey Rocks. There's light. There's the light in Key West. They're all over. They're down the coast. They're spaced out. Well, next thing I know, okay, we're now up and on plane, and we're surrounded by all these other boats that are going 100 miles an hour, and you kind of glance at the guys that are in them, and it's like, oh my God. Oh my God, there's more than one of them. Okay, and they're going, and they are not kidding around.
No,
and you're holding on for dear life, and sometimes you'll even bump, and it's close, and we're running to Alligator Light with me with my stupid helmet on, and holding on like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. I have no chance. But you can't punk out, 'cause
Right.
they'll make you wear a diaper at the marina.
Right. They'll put you to shame.
So I'm just hanging on, holding on. Now I trusted Gary. He gave me a sense of I wouldn't call it safety, but a sense of he knew what was going on, and he knew what was doing, and he knew how to do it. Because he had been racing before. He had a boat called Bad Company. Somebody the other day sent me all kinds of pictures from a magazine that he was in.
Wow.
So anyway, we're going, all right, and just imagine turning the light, Alligator Light, turning at it, because by the way, under and around the light is rocks, so you gotta compensate for that little factor. Anyway. And we're turning at close to 120 miles an hour. We're turning.
In like a 50-foot boat. Yeah.
In this giant, and it was called Flapjack because of the Quam's business. But I quickly noticed that there was tension between Mr. Quam and Mr. Jeffries. Gary doesn't. How can I explain it? Gary expects you to do what you got to do, and you know what you're doing, and get it done. Quam is just a rich guy. So we're going, and we're running, and the wind, I wouldn't call it wind, I would call it the draft that you're in. You literally almost can't hold your head up.
Wow.
And you're kind of like trying to hold your head up, but you'd almost be better off putting your head like in a down position, but then you can't see where you're going. So there's always little pitfalls in this offshore racing operation.
Decisions to make.
Yeah, so we're going, and then Quam and Gary are screaming at each other periodically, but but you can't hear anything.
Right.
We didn't have sound back then. A couple of years later, there was sound in the helmets, and you could talk you could scream to the guy next to you.
Yeah.
So we're going, and I mean we're going, and this is and we lap. It took I don't know how many laps we made, and we're going. And you got to remember when you're doing a lap, you're in the I guess you would call it the psychiatric ward of the VA hospital. I mean, really, this is not for the faint at heart.
Right.
And I've seen guys jump just to get out of there.
Wow.
I saw a guy do it in Key West.
Holy crap.
On ESPN. And then when they found out he didn't really jump, he was the sponsor, and he had a nervous breakdown and wanted to be taken to the doc.
Wow.
So the guy that was the actual driver threw him out of the boat. He told him, okay, get over by the gunnel, the side of the boat, and we'll drop you off. So we got over by the gunnel. He threw him out of the boat.
Literally dropped him
on ESPN, and then took off and finished the race. And then it was me, a guy named Dick Schwartz, and Enzo Guerrero. He came in, and we saw it on TV because we had broke. Mm-hmm. I said, what happened? He goes, hey, sissy. So I threw him out. I said, you threw the sponsor out of your boat. He goes, yeah. No problem.
Yeah.
No problem. So anyway, so now we're going and going and going. So what do you think happens next in this little saga? You're listening to the Footy Podcast. I'm here with Ron Hershey, radio legend forever. We do a podcast, I don't know, once, maybe twice a week, and we post them up. And you can go find them and watch them and listen to them. And, we do have, I could probably sit here for the next 30 years, 40 years, telling stories, because of our careers involved so much bizarro stuff.
Right.
That, you go. So anyway, now we're
bouncing up and down.
And I see Gary keeps pointing at one of the gauges and yelling at Quam. I don't know what's going on. All I know is my hand is still on the handle here. I'm still okay, and I'm ready in case of an emergency to jump.
Right.
Okay. I don't know if you've ever been thrown into the water at 100 miles an hour, but water is very dense.
Yeah.
And when you hit it,
it's hard.
Because I flipped a mini boat at Holiday Isle, and when I got off the bottom, I didn't have any clothes on except for my life jacket.
Wow.
The water just peeled everything off of me when I hit it. So it was quite an embarrassing moment.
Especially
but
if the
I was
water
known
cold.
in those days, I'll tell you that, I was known in those days, to be upside down all the time.
Mm.
So anyway, so Gary's screaming like crazy. They're arguing. Going. All of a sudden, the whole thing. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And I pick my legs up, because again you're in the bolster seat, and I see like pistons, like a washing machine, like pistons and pieces and spark
engine parts
winging around in the bottom of the boat. So I got my legs up so I wouldn't get lose my limbs to I'm like, what the hell is it? Well, what it was Quam. See, in the big time boats, they usually don't own the motor. They rent the motor. So Quam rented 2 motors. It was a twin engine. He rented 2 motors from the Mercury Performance segment of it. Mm-hmm. So they bring the big Mercury truck down and everything, and they install the motors. And they tune them, they get them all ready. It's a lot of money involved. Back then, it was $25,000 per engine.
Wow.
This is
I hope there was a big purse.
a long time ago. These guys ain't racing for money.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
They're racing to beat your ass and to
Right.
have bragging rights and to get that trophy.
Mhm.
It's really it. So, but they did do a lot of side betting. Anyway,
Of course.
well, one of the motors from the Mercury Performance Department blew up.
Mhm.
The thing exploded. And when we finally, when all the engine parts landed, we're there and Gary takes his helmet off, throws it down. You can't wait to get those helmets off because you're dying in sweat and everything else. So he's screaming and arguing with Quam. What it was is Quam. Maybe I shouldn't use his name so much. But I guess that horse has left the barn, huh? No, but this is true. It really was him.
Well, just say allegedly, and you'll be okay.
Yeah,
Quam
I
allegedly.
allegedly knew all these people. Okay? So what he had done was he jammed the throttles, and those are like the gas pedal, but they're, they're handles. And he jammed them all the way down. And just flat out, we're going.
Mm-hmm.
And Gary's looking at the oil pressure gauge, and the oil pressure gauge is going, and he didn't back off. He basically kept it jammed down till it blew up.
At full throttle.
But he didn't care.
Right.
Wasn't his motor. He paid $25,000 to rent it, and well, here's your motor back. The pistons are in the bow. Okay, so. Now we had to go all the way around to go to the launch, where they would put the boats in the water, and that's where you lift the trailers and all that. And we're coming in, and Quam, how can I explain this? He's trimming out the outdrive, the propeller thing. He's trimming it out, so it gets more and more. Well, eventually, it's at the surface. So what happens with the giant triple cup stainless steel props is it's like Niagara Falls in the boat. It's coming down. Well, they're screaming and cursing at each other. So we eventually get there. Quam runs off. His wife picked him up. They got in the car and took off.
Allegedly.
So we now have to take the boat back to Holiday Isle on the trailer so they could return to Miami. This is not a very simple driving thing. Gary gets the boat on the trailer. We go, him and I are riding up there. And, there was always a giant traffic jam on weekends
always
at Holiday Isle.
on US 1. Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, there's clearly no place to park, even when Joe made the parking lot across the street. And all of a sudden, I hear... He somehow or another maneuvers the boat into, he found the space. Now you got this boat, this is not a little, with the truck and the trailer and the boat and everything. And he opens the door and goes, "Come on, let's go to the bar." So, let me tell you, I was in quite a hurry
to get to the bar.
Yeah, I really couldn't drink because I was shaking from isometric, holding on tight for so long, and he's acting like nothing happened.
Right.
And all right, so I'm Footy. This is our weekly podcast. That's Ron Hersey, Spencer, our producer, and this is today was episode 2. Because we're going to do them as episodes. And believe me, there is no end to this saga. And you were there for a lot of it. What kind of crazy things did they make you do?
Well, we used to go to Alamorada all the time. In fact, the day I was told I no longer worked at Y100.
You got fired at Holiday Isle?
I packed up my shit and went to Holiday Isle. I was like, well, no sense in crying over spilled milk. May as well go have a nice weekend. But you were talking about Joe Roth, and he was such a funny guy. And he loved us. I mean, he just rolled out the red carpet at Holiday Isle, which was one of the reasons why we used to go there all the time.
My kids, because they were, teens, early teens, they could go to Holiday Isle anytime, anywhere. Joe took pride in Johnny and Nick. And he would always say to Nick, I used to change your diapers. And Joe would open up the bait box, so they could fish in the marina all night long. I mean, they had it knocked.
Yeah.
So anyway,
well, I was going to say, my fondest story of Joe Roth was, I called him one time and said, hey, a couple of us want to come down. He's like, no problem, got you covered. Yeah. Let us know when you're there. So I get there, and I ask the front desk if Joe's available, and he comes out of the office, and he says, look, he goes, we're kind of booked up. He goes, but he goes, I'm gonna put you next door at the Howard Johnson's. And I said, well, you don't have to go to that expense. He goes, there's no expense.
He owned it.
He owned it. And I said, I had no idea. He goes, I go, why did you do that? He goes, I got tired of people complaining about my rates. People would come in and say how much for a room, and I would give them the rate, and they would say, that's highway robbery. I'll go next door to the Howard Johnson's. He goes, so I bought the Howard Johnson's, so I could tell him, go ahead. I dare you.
Well, he had another technique that he used for when people were overbooked or couldn't, and it was called take the bum and throw him out of the room. Because he...
Allegedly.
No, if we showed up and all the rooms were full, somebody filled up all the rooms, whatever, he would throw somebody out of the hotel. You pack your stuff, get out. You can't have the room anymore.
That's funny.
And he'd give us the room. It'd be like, okay, Joe.
And the parties, and you talk about the tiki bar. I remember we were there for like a DJ confab one time, and I think industry consultant John Sinton, I think, came down for that. But
never heard of him.
We had this thing they used to do on Fridays, the Friday afternoon, the weekend blast off. They used to like play all these obscure songs that we didn't normally play on the air, and it was always a big. I think every station did it. So they decided to do the weekend blast off live from the tiki bar, and it's one of those wooden structures, with 2x4s for a floor. And the thing I've never forgotten, there were so many people dancing on that quote-unquote 2x4 dance floor that they had to stop. They had to clear the dance floor because the boards were literally bouncing up and down so much. The nails were coming up out of the floor.
Well, I'll tell you why.
I mean,
the sun draws those nails out.
That's partying with a vengeance.
Yeah,
when you start pulling the nails up out of the floor,
that was an everyday occurrence. All right, we're going to have to wrap this one up, episode number 2. I'm going to put a to be continued, all right, for next week. And Joe used to have, we did every Labor Day, Memorial Day, the big holidays, whatever they were in the summer. 4th of July.
4th of July was big.
Joe would put on a fireworks show.
I've been there.
Okay. Well, so have I. Only I was on fire.
Well, I can't wait to hear that story.
Yeah. I'm Footy. This is our podcast. We're glad for you to join us, and feel free to contact us, and feel free to make comments or ask questions or anything you want to do.
Keep your complaints to yourself.
Yeah.
We don't want to hear that.
Either that or I'll put you in a race boat. Tie you down. Take you for a little spin.
And go full throttle.
All right, so that's this week's podcast, episode 2. And next week we will be doing episode 3. We may start to do more than one a week. We may do, because this can go on. Ron and I can be 100.
We can go on.
Yeah, we're going to die before we use all the stuff. So we got that going for us, which is kind of nice. I'm Footy. We'll see you next week, or hear you next week, or watch us next week. Ron Hersey, Spencer, our producer, and we're off and running.
Thank you for listening to the Footy Podcast. To benefit, here's help. For more information about the Footy Podcast or Here's Help, contact us at 305-685-8201. If you need help or know someone who has a substance abuse or alcohol problem, you can call our admissions office at 305-685-8201, extension 224. If you'd like to make a cash donation to Here's Help and join the fight against drug abuse, call Footy at 305-685-8201, extension 227. The executive producer of the Footy Podcast is Sam Zacco, COO of Here's Help.